Hello, what's going on, Yu-Gi-Oh community? This is J Money here. Now, a lot of you people are going to be seeing this for the first time regarding my channel because I'm a very small channel and I'm going to be posting this on nearly every platform known to man, whether it be on the bigger YouTubers channels, Zodiac Duelist, you name it, because there is something I've been really wanting to address to you guys, and that is you guys' way of thinking as of late. Now, what am I talking about? Well, for starters, I'm responding to a lot of people's responses regarding the two most recent FTK videos regarding the Goki FTK featuring Cannon Soldier and the Pendulum Infernity FTK featuring Amazonas Archer. Now, we all know these are incredibly old cards, and we all know incredibly old cards are known for having such poor design because, you know, the game was really slow back then, and once per turn things were kind of irrelevant because, you know, the game was really slow. But, you know, that obviously leads to a lot of those older cards getting really powerful later on in the years, hence why so many of the older cards have been eroded and are still banned currently. So there's that. So, you know, I'm guessing just seeing these cards, you know, rubs people the wrong way, which it should. But people don't point their anger towards these cards, you know. They've been pointing their anger towards something that I believe is still needed for the game, and that is Firewall Dragon. Now, you know, of course this is going to rub a lot of casual players and a lot of rogue players the wrong way as well. And, you know, I can understand that's fine, X and Y, but don't let Firewall Dragon pay for the mistakes of, you know, burn cards. You know, these cards were already incredibly silly and incredibly exploitable. They've been abused in the past. You just needed the right cards to actually exploit just how silly these cards really are. The best thing is to really just get these out of the game, and I'm not talking about just these. I'm talking about, you know, that also includes Toon Cannon Soldier, and that includes Cannon Soldier MK2. That includes those two because turn 1 burn is okay, but if you have the physical ability to continue to burn to infinity, that was never okay in the first place. And of course, people didn't care about these cards because this wasn't a thing back when. Now it's a thing. People want to go after this and keep these cancerous cards in the game when Firewall has done more good for the game than it has harm. Now, granted, you know, Firewall Dragon in 3 copies, you know, was pretty ridiculous even without the FTKs. That I'm not going to deny. However, rogue decks have thrived more, the absolute most, since Firewall's debut into the TCG. You know, so many decks are able to actually, you know, this card brought a lot of decks back to life. Contrary to belief, they may not be the best decks, they may not be topping regionals, but it makes it to where you can actually play these decks again because Master Rule 4 really crippled a lot of rogue decks. Master Rule 4 has obliterated a lot of rogue decks. And Firewall is the only card keeping them alive. And now I know people are going to make the argument that, you know, you can't just keep banning all these cards around one card, blah, 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 blah. But if these cards were already stupid to begin with, then I think it's a good thing to keep these in because the thing about it is, Firewall Dragon is a necessity. It really is, and a lot of people don't believe so. And here's because they're not thinking about Master Rule 4 as a whole. This is needed because Master Rule 4 is a thing. If Master Rule 4 wasn't a thing, this wouldn't be needed. Firewall Dragon wouldn't be needed to keep combo decks somewhat alive. And I know just by saying combo decks, some people out there are just gonna be like, well, that's good, blah 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 blah. And what I'm trying to, you know, open you guys' eyes to is the fact that Firewall Dragon is not the be-all, end-all of the meta. It never was. It was never, you know, the dominating force. Look at last format. You know, you had Pendulums, True Dracos, and all that. That wasn't even a thing. last format. Now, the other thing I want to just go ahead and squash really quick is the fact that everybody keeps saying every FTK is centered around Firewall Dragon. Well, if you guys can recall, last format, the Pendulum FTK and the Gem Knight FTK, they both did not require Firewall Dragon to function. So, I don't know where people are getting this from. I mean, did people forget that? Did people forget that, you know, Firewall never abused those FTKs? I mean, obviously some people did. But anyway, even people's arguments is, even if these were to go, even if these were out of the game, people still will continue to complain about this card, even though people were not complaining about this card last format, because again, it wasn't, you know, the dominating force. It wasn't the be-all end-all. But people will still complain about the fact that you get an infinite amount of special summons, and that's not healthy for the game. Blah 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 blah. For starters, you're not even though it is on paper infinite amount of special summons, really you're only getting as many special summons as the amount of cards in the turn player's hands, which is not really that much. It's really about 2 to 3 cards max. Because although that, you know, some of the materials can come from the deck and all that, for starters, you're never going to want to summon Firewall up at the top. You want to summon it either down in zone 2, 3, or 4, so you can get a maximum amount of return on your investment to hard make this card. Because if you guys haven't forgotten, not only is Firewall Dragon limited, but the token spawners that you could use turn 1 to ease up on your investment, being Gofu and Dandelion, they are both banned. They are both banned, so now you're spending hard resources to make this card. And this card is needed to start and finish combos. I know some people will find that hard to believe, but most decks require Firewall to be on the field for their combo to even finish. Without Firewall, there is no... you can't start combos, you can't finish combos. And a lot of people say, well, just, you know, just make an attribute Link monster like a Mrs. Radiant, so you won't have to invest as much. And no, Firewall Dragon, his effective special summon from the hand is too important in 2018. In fact, Firewall, if it was really the be-all end-all, it would be completely dominant in the meta. You would see Gokis and Spirals, the only two meta decks that actually use Firewall for their combos. You would see those just completely overhauling and completely dominating the meta, and that is far from the truth. As you guys can clearly take a look from all the European nationals and all that stuff, this is far from the truth. You got 4 control decks. You got Altergeist, you got Trickstars, you got Dracos, you have the newly added Sky Strikers to the mix. These are 4 control decks that are very solidified as meta that don't even use Firewall. So, in reality, right now, control decks are winning the battle, not the spam decks. People are just, you know, so blinded by personal bias, and don't like Firewall, and they just want to get it out of the game by any means necessary, and they fail to realize that there are more control decks right now, you know, that are actually running rampant. And they're not really running rampant because, you know, Goki is a nice contender. But Sky Strikers and Sky Striker Trickstars, or even Trickstars, are still just equally as popular. Now that I've made that perfectly clear that Firewall is not the problem, because if it was, it would be just completely overhauling the meta, which is clearly not. If this were to go, combo decks, as you know, would cease to exist. Because, once again, Master Rule 4 is a thing. Master Rule 4, being in the game, restricting extra deck access, added with the fact that Firewall getting banned, will make it impossible. You can say goodbye to completing any combos your deck wants to do. Gofu and Dandelion are still banned. You can say goodbye to triple culling Tri-Gate Wizards. They'll be damn near impossible. Now, some decks can still pull this off. However, you'll have to waste your entire hand to do so. And that's just absolutely garbage, because no hand, dumping your whole hand down for just literally one negate is, in 2018 is, yeah, that's pretty bad. And, you could say goodbye to, you know, Topologic Gunbar Dragon out of Battles of Legend, Relentless Revenge. You could say goodbye to that card too, because, you know, for those of you who don't know, it's his effect completely depends on you being extra linked. And that's the other thing. A lot of people believe, extra link is cancer, and, you know, it shouldn't be in the game, and it's degenerate, blah, 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 blah. Regardless, it is still a viable game mechanic. It is still a game mechanic, nonetheless. Spam is just as much of a strategy as control, you know. And that's the thing. If Firewall got, like, Firewall versus control decks, it's a check and balance. It's a nice check and balance. And again, there's more control decks in the meta right now than spam decks that are actually succeeding. If you were to take this out, you would have nothing but control decks. Everything that's control based, tricksters, altergeist, all of it, they would just run rampant, and yeah, no contest. Firewall is that happy medium. At one copy, it's fine. Again, last format, nobody was complaining about this card. If that makes any sense, nobody. And that's because it wasn't dominating. Now, the format before, when it was at 3 copies, yes, people were complaining. And again, that's for good reason, because Firewall Dragon at 3 is pretty ridiculous. And then it got limited, people shut up. And, you know, FTKs, people screamed, ban the FTKs, but nobody was looking at Firewall, because that wasn't the sole reason behind it. It is not the sole reason behind every FTK, because once again, Pendulum FTK and Gem Knight FTK did not need this card to function, and it is not the overhauling force of the entire meta. Even, and some people would even go as far as to say, just change this to once per turn, and I can far from agree with that, because of the fact that in 2018, any combo deck knows that just one special summon just isn't enough. I mean, look at Ancient Fairy Dragon. The only special summon that actually did something when Ancient Fairy Dragon was legal was in ABCs, and that's because they don't need Firewall, and they would just go into Decode to make Buster. Now they will make Firewall the next turn. You know, that'd be pretty cool, but this is besides the point. Firewall Dragon is not the problem. These burn cards are. Firewall Dragon is completely fine because it's not dominant, completely dominant in the meta. There are more control decks than spam decks. And the whole thing about special summoning once, you know, just infinite special summons, it's a myth, because you're only going to have a limited amount of cards in your hand to summon anyway. Firewall Dragon is only as good as the monster it summons. And it has always been that way. This is why Terraforming in the TCG is still at 3. Because Terraforming is only as good as the card it searches. Now, you could argue that the OCG has it at 1, but people seem to continuously forget that OCG also has 3 set rotations in their game. We only have 1. So, you know, that's just a nice little switcheroo. You know, they got 3 set rotations, 1 Terraforming. We have 3 Terraforming, 1 set rotation. You know, there's no way they're hitting Terraforming unless they're going to move set rotation up in numbers. So, I hope it made sense to you guys. For those of you who just absolutely or just dread spam decks, just put your personal opinions aside, put your personal bias aside, and actually look at the format. Actually look at how much of an impact Firewall is actually making. Because if it was, then Tricksters, Altergeist, Dracos, Sky Strikers, they'd all be using this card, which they clearly aren't. And Spirals and Gokis just need it to finish a combo. Once again, this is used to start and finish combos because of its ability to special summon from the hand, and because of its ability to recoup some of those cards that you actually hard spent invested into this card. It pays you back. You know, it kind of has to, because you're spending your actual combo pieces, your starters and your extenders to make this card in the first place. You should be able to get those cards back and actually perform the combo that your deck was intended to make. So, And, you know, making boards is just as much a part of Yu-Gi-Oh! As setting 5. You know, I know a lot of people don't like U-shaped boards, but me personally, I'd much rather deal with a U-shaped board than deal with an Altergeist Multi-Faker plus a Sequidus, which is the Kirin, and a Rivalry of Warlords and an anti-spell. I'd much rather deal with a U-shaped board. It's actually much easier to deal with that than Floodgates, because, you know, Floodgates actually they actually restrict you from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! But, you know, that's something for another time. But let me know what you guys think about this. A lot of Yu-Gi tubers even say that Firewall needs to go and not these cards. These are the perpetrators. These are the cards actually killing you, not the Firewall. Everybody's saying get rid of the enabler, and Firewall is an enabler, I'm not gonna lie, but it needs to enable good things. It doesn't need to enable trash like this, you know. Let it enable combos. Don't let it enable FTKs. If it enables FTK, get rid of the FTK, and don't let combo decks get ruined because of people's personal bias. Because contrary to belief, Konami does listen to us. To some of us, at least. They do pay attention sometimes. And if this card gets banned, once again, combo decks will cease to exist under Master Rule 4. And it'll be control decks until the end of time. So, thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know what your opinion of this is. No personal bias either. I don't want any personal bias. I want you to go look straight down the middle and look at the balance that we have so far between spam and control, and look at the FTKs and see that Firewall wasn't behind them all, because look at last format once again. And see that this really isn't the be-all, end-all of the entire meta. Because again, if it was, you would see nothing but Gokis and Spirals, which that is far from the case. So, thank you guys for watching. This is J Money, and I am signing out.